Good morning, Seattle. I love that. Awesome. Okay, so my name is Herman Lee. I lead our professional services team here at App Annie. And today I'm going to share some general industry trends, some of which you probably know if you've been following our reports. Otherwise, all this is amazing insights for you today. So, from our recent State of Mobile report, here's some really interesting stats globally. I want to ask you a quick question. So over here it says, on average, the mobile consumer spends 3 hours a day on their mobile device. What do you think games take up? 2.5. 2.5? Very optimistic. Well, the reality is that it is actually around 30 minutes to a little over an hour. Especially here in the United States, it's a little bit about 45 to 50 minutes. However, in APAC, it is well over an hour. So games, of course, is a tremendous opportunity. Actually, there we go. Okay. And here's another interesting tidbit. So when you look at revenue generated by games across all the platforms, what do we see? We see that mobile revenue is exceeding all the other platforms. We're talking about console, we're talking about PC games. It exceeded 2017 and into 2018, and we expect that to grow continuously into 2019. So what are some of the possible driving factors behind this? It is really the amazing work that you're doing here. Okay, so taking a step back. So what is App Annie? So some of you are our customers already, but for those of you who do not know, we provide industry-leading insights about the entire marketplace. So you can understand what consumers are doing in terms of downloads, revenues, engagement, and usage across a variety of app categories, a variety of genres, and we help our customers better understand what is really going on out there so that then you can build better engagement mechanisms to really reach those gamers. Now, of course, my team's involvement is about helping those customers in really distinct projects to really move that needle even further. So to no surprise, we work with thousands of customers around the world, top gaming companies as well as top mobile-first publishers out there. And so let's dive back in. What happened in 2018? What can we learn from the past year that will inform us for the future? So if you just look at App Annie's maturity curve by country, really this is about by market, where do people stand? So our countries stand. So you have India, Brazil that are still in the emerging category. So what that really means is there's high degrees of download, very relatively low monetization. For those of you who publish in those emerging markets, you know what I mean. And then you have the second tier, Chinese cities, you have the UK who fall into what we're calling the adoption phase. You still have very strong download growth. You're getting ramping revenue growth and engagement growth. And at the ubiquity stage, you see, to no surprise, our top tier Chinese cities, you see Japan, you see the US, where you see the downloads rate having slowed, but you see continued ramping growth. Okay. Who's been jumping my slides? Come on, go back, go back, go back. Oh. Okay, why does it keep on jumping back? All right, come on, back. Okay. It really wants me to talk about this without everything else. So I'm gonna go with it. So on that previous slide, it was just about, I really want the other, okay. All right, so what it really is continued growth in revenue, especially on the matured markets. You will find it more challenging in acquiring those new users. Then we can go. All right, so top 10 games worldwide by active users. What do we see? Okay, some obvious players. You see some interesting things, of course, that happened in 2018. You see the introduction and really resurgence of popularity when it comes to battle royale games. But similar to what Ivan was talking about, you see a very big pop, especially on number 10 with Helix Jump on the hyper-casual side. So, hyper-casual, battle royale, really big, not just on the battle royale side, not just on console and PC games, but also on mobile. Now, when you try to look at some of those top countries that I was pointing to earlier, and what are the top 5 game titles in each, you see that trend kind of popping through. Okay, so in the top 5, you see proliferation of Battle Royale. You also see a proliferation of the hyper-casual. And of course, with the hyper-casual, as was talked, one of the biggest problems is churn. And so what we also see with some of these players in the hyper-casual space is that they are continually introducing a whole constellation of hyper-casual games so that they can move those eyeballs from one title to another and keeping those people inside that ecosystem to maximize the ad revenue. Diving a little bit deeper into the Battle Royale genre for a moment. So here are the mature markets indexed in terms of active users. Okay, there was a big pop in US, Japan, South Korea, UK. And then it really stabilized for the past several months, and we expect that to continue to be pretty constant. Not big pops here and there. But perhaps with Apex Legends now coming to mobile, there's going to be another little pop that will bring that up even further. But as you can see, there's nothing spectacular in its future growth. Emerging markets. Apologies for those in the back of the room. That really light line is India. Soak that in for a moment. Tremendous opportunity to go to other countries, especially emerging markets. Now, yes, as I've said earlier, India, you've got growing downloads, you've got growing usage base. Monetization is hard, but it's hard to ignore that growth in active users. All right, so let's just talk revenue now. So in terms of where consumers are actually having their spend, to no surprise, US, Japan, South Korea, Germany, and so on and so on. Also continue to pay attention to India, Brazil. Year over year, still impressive revenue growth, relatively speaking, still small dollar amounts. Very important to not lose track of those markets. Big story of 2018, of course, was China. So for those who are not aware, I'm just going to give you a quick overview. In 2018, late 2017, early 2018, China put a stop on licensing new games. They recently just unfroze that revenue potential. So really, in 2018, to no surprise, the revenue growth year over year had slowed. A lot of the publishers that we work with in China really were just depending on life support on their old titles. But we expect that to grow back again. And so that's going to be exciting. And of course, some of it is in the news recently of how the Chinese government has been tweaking what are the different criteria set to gain approval. So of course, the recent removal and replacement of PUBG to be, I'm getting this wrong probably, Games for Peace or Peace, Game for Peace, where it's now a blend of propaganda and very non-gory death. All right, so then all those things that happened to Chinese publishers in 2018, what have they been doing since? Export. As you can see, many of our publishers out there have been either trying to publish directly into foreign markets or doing some sort of a partnership or acquisition to then broaden their revenue horizons. We expect that to continue in terms of their attempts to enter the US market, UK market, Japan market, and so on. And we see a lot of that in the news periodically of that happening. So what can we go looking into 2019? I've alluded to this already, but we expect by end of 2019 that mobile growth in terms of mobile revenues to surpass 60%. Now, I want to remind everyone, this estimation is excluding advertising. So this is purely the initial mobile purchase, all IAP. So any additional revenue from the advertising perspective is gravy on top of this. So when we looked at the top 100 games, and we recategorized it based off of something that is probably more meaningful to this crowd, we see that casual games continue to be very lucrative. So we're going to dive real quickly into sports, casino, casual, and mid-core for a moment. There's going to be some interesting opportunities for you going forward for the rest of this year and into next. So when you look at the ARPU plots and graphs over the past few years, you see some interesting trends. Of course, casual continuing to increase exponentially in the upper right. Mid-core slowed down a little bit. There's an interesting story there, casino and sports. So let's get into casual. So similar to what was talked about by the previous speaker, hyper-casual is really big driver in this space. And I probably cannot espouse the importance of continuing to have some titles into this casual space to continue to make it grow. Year over year, we see ARPU 60%, 80% when it comes to revenue, total revenue growth. Mid-core. Mid-core slowed down a little bit, didn't it? 2018. There were some titles that really contributed to this fault. Now, remember, this analysis is based off of like the top 100 games that we see, and we recategorize it. So looking at some of the top mid-core games, a lot of this was, we'll just say, problems of their own making. So what can you learn from this? There's still tremendous opportunity here. I mean, look at that. ARPU is still well above that index of 100. Although that total revenue has come down a bit, there's a tremendous opportunity to develop new titles that better target and monetizes those that are interested in mid-core games. Opportunity. Now, the mid-core RPG has definitely bucked this trend. RPG, people are always really engaged in trying to connect with others, play with others, especially when we're talking about MMORPGs. That game growth is tremendous. Keep up the good work there. So other trends to watch out for. There's been some talks about what are some things that we can expect for 2019. We expect, for one thing, keeping an eye out on subscription-based monetization methods. With Apple's announcement, that's great. But that is, of course, going to be very limited to a very subset of game publishers and titles that they cherry pick. However, it doesn't mean that you cannot experiment with your own types of subscription models to help your customers come back again and again and again in a steady stream. Not relying so much on individual loot boxes or individual IAPs that you can buy to further advance or get more coins. Another key thing to watch out for 2019 would be some of the introductions when it comes to Battle Royale. See what kinds of interesting differences that they will be coming up with. And then, of course, with hyper-casual, to some degree, it's kind of near that envelope when it comes to monetization. So definitely keep an eye out on that. And with that, we have a little booth in the back. Please come and stop by and visit us and have a quick chat. Love to be able to discuss. If there's anything that I have not covered here, more than happy to. Yes, question?
Just to temper expectations.
Yeah.
In one slide there where you show the growth curve in India.
Yeah. We'll try to.
Have you guys segmented that growth curve to determine how much of it is honest players engaging with apps rather than what I've seen with a lot of our ad networks, which turns out to be fraudulent?
Whether or not that.
There's a whole industry there, right? And it might come up as installs or come up in the mouth line. But as you said, revenue doesn't support that trend in spending players. And we have this issue constantly. We'll engage an ad network, analyze the installs, and find out that there's a lot of fraud there. But we'll still come up in terms of data.
Right, in terms of like the engagement of the active users. So the question was about the Indian market and how engaged are those users, and do we see a lot of fraud in that? Haven't looked at the fraud angle specifically, but what we definitely would agree with is the actual monetization from India is still relatively low. The active users, while growing very high, the actual time and spent by those users relatively is not as like at the same level as like the US market would be. Now, ways of overcoming that is a different angle. It definitely would be more interesting to look at after this to see, okay, of those, the advertising spend by network and then separating that out.
So you guys haven't actually segmented that trend line to figure out how much is
Correct, yeah. All right. Yeah.
You were very compact. You got through it. I was just prepared for the next thing.
Well, we tried to be on time.
That's good. No, very good. Is there any more questions for? Yes, there's a question.
Yes,
We've got a couple of minutes still.
MMO that you mentioned.
Yes.
Did you also include mobile battle arena games, or are they another segment that you?
So in this, okay, the question was when we were looking at the, actually, let's go back to this one. When we were looking at the mid-core, were we looking at?
You look at the other one with MMO games.
Yeah.
Make another completely different segment compared to mid-core because they behave in another, in terms of both ARPU and revenue exchange. Yeah.
Yep.
Did you also include mobile games in this?
Oh, were MOBA games included as part of this? I don't know exactly. One of my analysts did this, and so I want to say, depending on the average duration, because we segmented this based off of the session and session time, some of them would have been in here. But most of them, because of that duration, would have been more under the what we would have categorized as the hardcore.